Good morning. I'm Morgan Spicer, Special Projects Coordinator for the ARC of the Mid-Ohio Valley, and welcome to our December episode of Legislative Matters Now with M&M.
And I'm Melissa Southall, Self-Advocate Coordinator for the ARC and People First. We're glad you're joining us.
The purpose of this show is to educate self-advocates, and anyone for that matter, on the important topic of legislative advocacy. Now, every month, Melissa and I take a piece of legislation and explain it in an easy-to-understand manner and why it's so important.
We also speak to a self-advocate in our Advocate in Action segment as they talk about how they are using their self-advocacy skills to help themselves or others live a more independent life, just like everyone else. We typically start the show with who you're going to call, because whenever you're talking about something or writing a story, you cover who, what, when, why, and how. Our Who You Gonna Call covers who and what. This show will cover the when, why, and how of contacting lawmakers. It is important that you contact lawmakers, but it is also important to contact them at the right time, the right format, and the right reason.
You might want to grab a pen and paper for this one. It's important to know who you're talking to when you're advocating for what you need so they can put a name to a face.
That's right, Morgan. To start, we are going back to one episode as we got the chance to talk to Senator Shelley Moore Capito as she talked about how to contact her office.
Hi, everyone. This is your Senator, Shelley Moore Capito. I'm also the first woman to ever serve as the elected U.S. Senator from West Virginia, and that is an honor I hold quite dearly. I'm so glad to have the chance today to talk to you about all of the importance of constituents' input into everything I do as I represent you. So my job as your Senator is to advocate and advance the legislative priorities particular to our state of West Virginia and to you. So in order to do that, I rely on the voices of all West Virginians, especially you. Your perspective and experience helps us better represent our people and our communities. And it helps us make meaningful impact in the lives of those with intellectual and developmental challenges in our state of West Virginia. There are several ways you can make your feelings known to me. One of the best ways is to reach out to my office either in Charleston or in Washington, D.C. You can call Charleston at 304-347-5372, or you can call my D.C. office at 202-224-6472. You can visit my website at www.capito.senate.gov, which has a page where you can pass along all of your opinions. You can also mail a letter to my office, but I must admit those come in a little bit late. My website has the addresses for all of my offices listed on the bottom of the home page. So no matter how you reach out, every message is reviewed and my staff and I will make sure a response is promptly issued. I cannot stress enough how important your insight and opinions are to my work here in Washington, and how much it means to me to hear from all of you back home. It is truly the lifeblood of our democracy, a government for the people, by the people, and I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you, Senator Capito, for that important information. Next, we got to talk to Terry Berkeley, who provided the contact information for Senator Manchin.
Senator Manchin has offices in 4 parts of the state: Martinsburg, Fairmont, Charleston, and in D.C. Senator Manchin encourages constituents to reach out to any of those offices, and you'll see now a staff map that includes a number of staff members from around the state of West Virginia working under the leadership of your United States Senator Joe Manchin to be helpful. What are some of those available services? Constituent services, jobs, economic development, and legislative services. What does that entail, you may ask? Well, perhaps you need some assistance with state or federal agencies. Perhaps you need help receiving or obtaining a military nomination. We work with constituents who have requests for internships and tours, American flags. You certainly can call your senator's office about surplus computers and book programs. Senator Manchin's outreach staff does mobile office visits to 55 counties in the state. Classrooms may ask for Skype sessions. Perhaps you have an event where you need a greeting or a certificate request. Maybe you're looking for a job and want to be included in job fairs or need a grant support letter. Perhaps you want to attract businesses or need help facilitating meetings. Reach out to the senator's office because those are areas that we can help. And then I heard you mention earlier in the show, Melissa, that if you perhaps had an issue with transportation and you reached out, in the same manner, constituents can reach out about appropriation requests, federal bills, resolutions, even if they just want up-to-date information about legislative information or perhaps even broadband speed testing. You can reach out to your senator's office, and that's what Senator Manchin's office is here for. Feel free to call us anytime at 304-342-5855. There's even a toll-free number, 1-855-275-5737. You can also visit Senator Manchin's website at manchin.senate.gov, and there you can send him an email, fill out an authorization form request for state or federal agency help, and find many other ways to connect with us. I'm happy to share this information on behalf of the United States Senator Joe Manchin. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Terry. Next, we got to talk to Chad Story, a representative for Congressman Alex Mooney.
Thanks for having us on. My name is Chad Story. I'm the Congressman's Deputy Chief of Staff and District Director. I oversee all constituent services in the district. The Congressman wanted to be with you today, but he is in DC and he's doing markups in the Financial Services Committee. So I'm happy to fill in for him. Contacting one of your congressional delegation members is really actually quite easy. The best way, I think, is by email or call. Sometimes when you do send mail, it is delayed, especially to their DC offices. It goes through screening and can take 2 to 3 weeks. Some of the services we provide, just like Senator Manchin, Capito, and we help with casework. Any federal agency, we can inquire on your behalf. Even state agencies, we have a great working relationship with Governor Jim Justice's office. So we're able to inquire with state agencies a lot of time. If you need flag requests, before COVID, we did a lot of tour requests. We're no longer doing those until that's lifted, of course. We have a lot of individuals and groups that reach out to us for support with grants, and we will pen letters of support for your grant project to try to win dollars for West Virginia. We've been very successful with that in the past and happy to do that. But reaching out to our office, we can go to mooney.house.gov. There's a contact me. You can even filter by what type of help you may need. You're able to do that very easily if you have access to the internet or just calling one of our district offices. We have 2 district offices, one in Martinsburg and one in Charleston. And then we have an office in DC. We're staffed with around 15, 17 staffers in all 3 offices. So we stand ready to help, to assist any way that you may need our assistance. I do know with reaching out to us, the congressman loves to read letters from constituents. So he does like when you actually send a letter, but that's not always necessary. I know we have different businesses who will reach out and they're like, oh, we want to hear from your members as well. So they'll all pen a letter and he'll read those and get great feedback by actual letters. But that's not always feasible, we understand. So emailing the office, calling the office you can go to our website, like I mentioned before, mooney.house.gov, and you can see all the services we provide. But you can also just call and talk to one of our staff members because we're all ready to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Next, we got to talk to West Virginia State Delegate Vernon Criss.
I think it's real important that you all get involved in those types of things. I come from my background as a part-time legislator that I'm in Charleston 2 months out of the year. The rest of the time is being in Parkersburg in our various family businesses that we have. And so everybody has a different walk of life when it comes to their background. It's important that you understand and that your constituents there understand that if they get involved in some of these public transportation issues or road issues, that it's important that we hear about it too, because again, I'm only as good a legislator as the information that's brought to me. If people that are involved on a part-time basis on these other boards and can come to us and give us the information that they have, it gives us better information to be able to make the decisions that need to be done. From the Parkersburg area, you can put up my email address. I think it's vernon.chris@wvhouse.gov. That's my email address, and I have that on my phone so I can check that. My phone number is 304-481-0167. If you want to call me and leave me a text or call me, a lot of times, as Doug has found out, while I'm in Charleston, I'm, believe it or not, going from meeting to meeting, and a lot of times I cannot answer the phone, but leave me a text or leave me a message, and I'll call you right back as soon as I can. But thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I really appreciate it. I hope to hear from you all and give me some input, because that's what I need to hear from.
Next, we spoke to former West Virginia State Delegate Diana Graves about contacting your legislators.
So it really depends on what the change is, what the law is, what you're trying to accomplish. It can be appropriate to call a legislator as your first step. For me, as a citizen, before I got to the House, I think the most important thing for me to have known is if you call a legislator first, they're going to have a number of things that they're probably going to ask you and that they're going to need to see. And so you would need to be prepared. And usually to get prepared, you need to have called a number of other people first. So it kind of depends on the circumstances.
Yes. Now, when should they start working on it in relation to the beginning of the session and make that phone call?
This is something I don't think a lot of people fully appreciate. It actually takes an enormous amount of lead time to have a change in law be successful at the end. So if the session, depending on what year it is, usually it starts at the first of the year, you need to have really started at least half a year before. And that's not always possible. And sometimes you can get things through at the last minute. But this was a perfect year. For example, we had an enormous freshman class of delegates coming into the House. And a lot of them, being new to the process and going from citizen to delegate, it's a learning curve there. And they started work on their key priorities the first day of session, and it's just too late to get started. Me, as an experienced legislator, if I'm working on a constituent issue, and I'll be happy to use that one as an example here, but if you're working on a constituent issue, if I can find out during the summer, that would be great. Because if you're going to do it right, it takes an enormous amount of work. I mean, you have stakeholder meetings you should probably have, depending on what the change in the law is. First, you've got to have some meetings with the person who brings it to you, what the issue is, and make sure that you fully grasp it. And this is exactly what happened with, for instance, the Employment First law. So it had been introduced in the House a few years, at least the year before, died. The advocate groups who were interested in it, I reached out to them and I said, hey, let's get together and let's learn about this thing. And we worked on it all year leading up to the session. And it did make it across the finish line. So I think when to start as early as you possibly can.
What do they need to have ready before making that call?
I'm going to use an issue that was brought to me by a constituent. He actually lives just down the street from me. His name is Barry Holstein. He lives here in Cross Lanes. He had a topic that was of particular interest to him, having to do with child sex trafficking. It's something he's been passionate about ending and eliminating in the state, and he's really educated himself about it. And he texted me one day and said, look, I think that there is a loophole in our law structure here in the state, and I want to see it fixed, and you're my delegate, so what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, let's meet. And we met a number of times. We talked it over. He sent me documents, which I reviewed. He's a good researcher, so there was a lot to review. And at the end of it, I was like, I think he's onto something. So the next step was, let's get people who know even more than Barry, other experts in on this. Shared Hope International met with us, and we went over all the research that had been done, and they weighed in on a couple of things about, they do think there's a problem, we need to address it. So we, crafted a piece of legislation. And once we had that in our hands, this is probably still 3-4 months before session. I sent that piece of draft legislation out to a couple of West Virginia people that I knew. Ramona Kenneberg, she advocates for the YWCA and she's very knowledgeable about this subject, and she lobbies at the Capitol for it. So I sent it to her and I was like, look, I think we're really onto something here. I want your opinion. So then you shop it out to various stakeholders, people who know a lot. They weighed back in and said, oh yeah, we do need to do this. So then I introduced it. It was in the drafting by November. And it's still, there was a lot of pieces of legislation that were introduced in drafting. So it took a while to get that out. But it came in, it was introduced. People were like, oh, we did not realize that it was not, in this particular circumstance, that it was illegal to knowingly procure a child for somebody else's use. Before this, that was a loophole in West Virginia State Code, something that absolutely has to be fixed. So it went through the whole system, passed through the Senate, and the governor signed it into law. That's Bill 2830. But I hope that gives an example of the kind of lead time that you need in order to get a really well-crafted law. It takes time.
Yes. That was a great example there,
Yes.
too. So is there anything that you would like to add?
I want to thank some people who helped me with the state's Employment First law that we passed. The advocates that I met with who really educated me about this subject was Tracy White from Cross Lanes, Christy Black from the Disability Council, and Christina Dedamore Smith. And not only did they really educate me about it, but they were available at a moment's notice when it's going through the Senate and people have questions, and I was able to text and get this answer and be really accurate. And without their help, literally it would not have happened. So I could not be more grateful. I think it's a great advancement for our state, and it shows that we care about real outcomes that are good for people with disabilities.
Yes, I so agree with that.
Yes. I would like to go back to one question, if it's all right with you, that I had asked earlier. So what you need before you call would...
oh, you're right. I got distracted.
Would fact sheets help any if those were sent out before, like, someone made a call?
I do think that is really useful. I'm not going to say it's crucial, but it's certainly helpful. When you're in this position in the House or the Senate, you really need to be an expert on everything, and that's just not humanly possible. I don't care how amazing you are. So fact sheets from groups that really have the information, that helps us make decisions that are not just based on our gut feelings. You don't want that. At least I don't want that in my legislators. If I've got a fact sheet, especially if it gives real examples, of why whatever the legislation is, it's needed, why it's needed, that's really helpful. And what you need before you call is, you do need the facts, because if the legislator that you're calling is a good legislator, one, they'll take the call, but two, they're going to ask you questions that really need answers of why do you think this is necessary? Do you have any proof that this is actually a problem? And your proposed solution, why is that the best way? So these are the kinds of things that you're going to need to be able to convince a person who hears from everybody all the time. You need to be able to cut through that noise and say, here's why, and here's what we can do about it, and convince them to help.
Thank you, Diana. Next, we spoke to Senator Amy Grady in January's episode about contacting your legislators.
People that hear from, and tell them don't be discouraged. Don't feel that you can't reach out and call your senator or delegate, because that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. Too often I talk to people who say they're not comfortable calling the office, but that's why we're in office, is to represent you. And you have the ability to pick up the phone and request to speak to your senator or to speak with your delegate, and voice your concerns. And this is a really big concern. It's a really important bill. So they really need to hear from as many people as possible. Have your family members call, have friends call, anybody that feels strongly about this, have them call. And like I said, put a personal story behind it, because that's always something that we remember, when we hear a personal story.
So, Amy, should people write letters or email, or would it be better to call?
I would do both. Honestly, it doesn't hurt to do an email. One thing I would try to stay away from doing is don't do a copy and paste email, where you send an email and then send a format out to somebody else and say, well, you send it too. Those get overlooked a lot because it's the same thing over and over, and it doesn't really look like you've put in a lot of time, or that it's an issue that you're really passionate about, if that makes any sense. A lot of times if we see so many copy and pasted emails that it's easy to overlook them. Well, here's another one of those. Well, here's another one of those, But if it's a personalized email and you write it yourself, whether it's 2 sentences, 3 sentences, or 4 paragraphs, send an email. You can send a letter actually to the office and make a phone call. All 3 of those would be great. The more we hear, the more likely the chances of the bill being picked up are.
In a previous episode, we spoke with Delegate Trenton Barnhart about contacting your legislators.
Well, I have several different methods in which I take constituent calls and constituent inquiries. First of all, people can email me at my house email address. People can reach out to me on Facebook. They can call me. They can text me. Whatever works. Any of those methods are fine. People send me letters. A lot of times what I look to do, though, if I get a message, I try to follow up with a telephone call personally so I can hear about the issue, find out what the concerns are, and where, be able to investigate that issue to see where I might be able to help.
So we encourage our self-advocates to do stories about their self-advocacy journeys. Is that something that you encourage?
Absolutely. The biggest thing is we hear about issues on a daily basis. I mean, I get hundreds of emails a week, but if I see something that's got a story, it grabs my attention particularly. I try to respond to all inquiries, but if there's a personal story that I can look and see, okay, dealing with this issue is going to help somebody get their road paved, or dealing with this issue is going to help somebody receive their unemployment benefits. Something that is tangible, something that is a personal story always resonates especially with me, and I think it adds to the need for us to get back with folks on those issues, and it makes me want to be more expeditious in getting back on that claim.
So when you get a story from a constituent, does that help when you're out in your committees? Do you read those? How does that work?
Absolutely. I mean, when you get, and it's best when it's a personal story, because when you get one of those form emails, you don't know where that all came from, and you don't handle that the same as you would a personal story or a personal situation. When I see that always impacts how I'm going to vote and how I'm going to try to advocate on the issue, because if I have constituents reaching out to me personally, I know it's important to them, and I want to make sure that I'm representing them as best I can and listening to those concerns fully.
And how does that influence the other committee members? What is the impact?
Well, I think it always impacts us because, at the end of the day, the best thing about the House of Delegates is it's the most accountable body in all of government in West Virginia, because we have 2-year terms, and at the end of the day, we're bound by the will of our constituents. So we have to make sure we're listening. We have to make sure we're open to all the concerns on these different issues, and when those concerns come through, there's a much better chance that you're going to get the outcome as the person who is seeking the bringing the concern forward.
Coming up, we got the opportunity to speak to West Virginia State Senator Roland Roberts in our episode explaining the amendments that was going to appear on the November ballots.
Probably most people are using email these days, but I get them in every way. I get them in all of the other ways also. The emails are good as far as the Senate is concerned. All you do is take the senator's first and last name, put a dot in the middle, and then go at West Virginia, wvsenate.gov. And so it's, in my case, it's Roland, ROLLAN, Roberts, ROBERTS, at wvsenate.gov. And I'm happy to get those emails. I get them every day by the scores. So people have to be patient. They have to understand, especially during the regular legislative session. It is not uncommon for me to get a couple hundred emails a day during the regular session while I'm attending committee meetings and trying to process hundreds of bills that are thrown at us at the same time. So I'm chairman of the Majority Senate Caucus. And so then I run meetings every day. We typically start at 7:30 in the morning, and we will be there until often 9. Sometimes we can squeeze in till 10. And we are doing nothing but talking about all of the ins and outs of bill after bill and topic after topic. It can be overwhelming. So I can fit in, and most legislators can fit in, reviewing emails in the evening.
When you do write, should you include a story to go with your request?
I think that certainly is a great thing to do. I would also say, because of time constraints, I would keep it concise and shorter rather than longer, because honestly, we often just don't have the time to read everything. You become a very fast speed reader, and you're skimming everything. You're doing it all day, and you're doing it half the night when we're in session, especially. During the interim times, it's a little bit easier, and we can process things. And I would say this, please understand, especially with senators, we represent, in my case, I represent 112,000 people. And you take that amount of people, and then you take the fact that a senator has 3 times the workload of a delegate, because there's 3 times the delegates that there are senators. And that is very important for people to get it and understand that we are wrapped up in lots of things all of the time, and we're trying to serve the people. But please understand, sometimes we can't get back to you at all, or sometimes we can't get back to you very soon. And I'm just telling you, it takes hours in the evening. I will not see my family for days and weeks at a time because of the constraints. And the only way I get to see them is I'm fortunate. I live a little over an hour away from Charleston, so I'm able to drive back and forth. But most legislators can't do that. They have to stay there. They're away from home, away from their businesses. And so just be patient. Don't be too critical, please.
Last but certainly not least, in a previous episode regarding the amendments, we spoke to Senator Ryan Weld about contacting legislators.
So I think it's extremely important that people, if they have something that they see during the legislative session or outside of the session that concerns them, that maybe it's a bill, or maybe they're having an issue here at home, maybe it's an issue with DMV or the tax office, that kind of thing. I think it's very important that people reach out to their elected officials, because at the end of the day, we work for you. You're our boss. And, I have 105,000 bosses here in the first senatorial district, and I take that very seriously. And so think of it in terms of the job that you have day to day. If your boss called you and you never called them back, how long do you think you'd have that job? Probably not very long. And so I take it very seriously that when my constituents reach out to me because they have an issue, that I reach out back to them, whether through email or Facebook, or they, give me a call. I do my best each and every day to make sure that I return those calls or those emails or those messages, because they have legitimate concerns and they should be heard.
Do you have a preference on how you'd like to be contacted?
I would say, that, outside of the session, like right now, email is probably the best way, because, I have the opportunity. I came in the office this morning and I went through my legislative emails and returned a few and forwarded a few on that I'll need some assistance with from, someone else. But during the session, it gets a little more difficult because, session is, our day starts at 7:30 and goes till, pretty late at night. And so a lot of times I think the best then is, for people to call my office in Charleston, because I have an assistant that is there day to day with me, and she can take those calls and give me some messages, but also, relay information back to people or put them in touch with the right, state office to get them help on an issue. And so it kind of changes, in and out of session for me.
We want to thank all of our senators and delegates for taking the time out of their schedules to appear on our show. We could have not done this without you all, and you have helped the advocates we serve with the important information that they can use when advocating for bills or issues that they have.
We hope by having this information, you are better equipped to speak to your senators and delegates, however you contact them, either by phone, mail, or email, or meeting them in person. Thanks so much for joining us on this final episode of the year.
That's right, Melissa. But don't forget, we're coming into 2023, which means we're still looking for guests or advocates in action. So you can contact us here at the office at 304-422-3151, or you can email me or Melissa directly. My email is morgan.spicer@thearcmov.org.
And mine is melissa.southall@peoplefirstwv.org.
That's right, Melissa. Thank you to all of our guest speakers and advocates in action throughout the year for appearing on our show. We had some amazing topics covered this year, and we hope you took as much out of it as we did. This was definitely a learning experience for us too.
It sure was, and I cannot wait for February of 2023 when we will debut Season 3 of Legislative Matters Now with M&M. Have a safe and happy new year, and we'll see you again in 2023. Until next time, advocacy matters.
And so do you. See you next time.
See you next time.